Yeah, the Packers did it again. What was practically unachievable has been done only a couple times in history. The Green Bay Packers have pulled off twice in a row. That's insanity. To have at least 2 Hall of Famers in a row is crazy and still unheard of, but then to have 3? There is something to this. From Favre to Rodgers and seemingly now locked in with Jordan Love, Packers keep finding and developing elite QBs in different eras of football. How do they keep doing this? Let's find out. After I spent hours researching, reading, taking notes, and simply watching football throughout the years, I found a pretty obvious but really not so hidden blueprint for building up QBs. And it's almost comical because it makes a lot of sense. Too much sense. But teams still don't do it. And for the Packers, it clearly is this foundational aspect for developing players for them. And not to mention, the Packers already do this for the wide receiver position, as well with players like Donald Driver, Devontae Adams, Greg Jennings, and Jordy Nelson, to name a lot. These guys didn't take off right away and they did have some playing time, but they did sit for a few years until they were a full-time starter. And in the same way, Rodgers sat behind Favre for 3 years. Love did the same for 3 years again. Sitting QBs is part of the recipe for ensuring success repeatedly at the QB position. And really all positions, frankly. It's not guaranteed, but so far it's worked really well. Not to mention, if you look at other QBs like Mahomes, Cousins, Hurts, and Brady, there is success. So sitting Rodgers and Love has proven to be key to making the guy. And it helps as well that we are talking about Hall of Fame QBs. Rodgers sat behind Favre, Love sat behind Rodgers, and to be able to watch these guys play, and watch them like in game, playing the game of football, seeing their mistakes, seeing their success in the meeting rooms when they're planning is very important to point out. And I know there's other examples of QBs starting off and looking good. You could say Allen, you could say Herbert, Burrow, Prescott, CJ Stroud. But again, I think of how many times teams have tried to do that. They draft a QB, think, oh, he's the guy, he's going to start off really well, and they start and they look awful, and then they are awful. But then you look at teams that at least sit their QB for some time. It's not a 100% success rate, but it definitely helps the numbers of success. And the Packers have a track record of this now. And I would say it's going to do well for them, and at least I'm saying that as a Lions fan. Next thing I noticed while researching, staring at film for hours, and writing notes in a way too expensive coffee shop with good coffee is a common trait with these Packers QBs. It's not only with Rodgers and Love, but you can look at other players outside with like Mahomes and Stafford. Arm strength is too often mixed up with this because there is a difference, and there's a correlation, yes, but a notable difference between arm strength and arm talent. To have arm talent, I think of QBs that can throw off different angles, where the feet are not set and mechanics are not technically sound. And in addition, I think arm talent consists of throwing at weird angles, even when your feet are playing right, but the arm is completely different from your standard throwing motion. Plus, it's something you hear with scouts in the draft. You're talking about having all the tools in the bag, being able to throw every single ball in every single location, which again, it doesn't equivalent to arm strength. I mean, you can look at JJ McCarthy. The guy has a missile of an arm and he only throws missiles, but he doesn't have that touch. But being able to throw every ball, which again, it doesn't equivalent to arm strength, but arm talent. Rodgers has been famous for his arm talent, being able to make throws that other QBs just cannot make, fitting it in tight windows that leaves defensive players speechless when watching film on Rodgers.
You got the best pass rush, you got the best coverage as a defensive back. It's irrelevant to him.
And Love has the capacity and the out-of-box ability to do the same. One of Love's biggest strengths going to the draft was being able to throw that cover 2 hole shot, which is probably one of the most difficult categorized throws a QB can make. And it's very celebrated. Like if you can do that, people love you. Something that also contributed to the Packers pulling off having elite QBs one after another is having a good high-level offensive-minded coach when Rodgers and Love were sitting and still being there when they finally would start. I know people don't like Mike McCarthy, and personally, I'm not a huge fan of him if I'm being honest either, but at the same time, he is a really good offensive coach. He was great with Green Bay with Rodgers, and yes, at the end of his tenure in Green Bay, the offense did definitely lose a step, but since taking over, quote unquote, for play calling with the Cowboys, Dak Prescott had his best career year. So Rodgers wasn't the sole reason why McCarthy was good with the Packers. Contributed, but not the sole reason. Just think about being in Rodgers and Love's shoes when they were first drafted. Sitting behind a Hall of Fame QB for several years, learning the ins and the outs of the offense that your head coach has in place. Learning the quirks, being able to study for literally 3 years with that same system, same coach, and to then take over the offense. It's really no surprise that Rodgers and Love have been incredibly successful so far, especially Love with LaFleur, in a system that's considered one of the best schemes to run in the NFL at this time, and LaFleur being one of those close individuals that work alongside Kyle Shanahan. You can't really ask for anything better besides maybe Andy Reid or Kyle Shanahan yourself, for offense that is. This, in my opinion, is the way to go for QBs. It's not the only way, and I'm sure there are and will be QBs where they are ready out of the box. But for quarterbacks that need some time to grow in the NFL, and it's a more of mechanics, learning how NFL defenses work, coverages, just being a young guy, this is the way to go to carve the best out of these guys and develop them the right way. There is a QB that looked like complete garbage his rookie year, thrown out to the Wolves with not much to go off of besides Calvin Johnson, a QB that got snubbed of the MVP award for the 2023 year. Matthew Stafford was a true MVP for the 2023 season. Check it out here.